our faultiness in not being live again today? I guess we have to. Everyone's
Already
going to know
have.
because, yeah, we have. Well, there's not going to be a live chat, so that's all right. We can still have our nice little obligatory intro time here. But, yeah, let's get going. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Unauthorized Caucus. It is Thursday, although Andrew and I are playing our time traveler tricks yet again. It's actually Thursday when you're watching this, but it's not Thursday when we recorded this. We did have to record, unfortunately, here the evening before because of scheduling conflicts. We may have to do the same thing next week, but I promise we have something that's actually pretty pressing and in the news, and we won't be on the live chat, but drop those comments below, please. It helps the algorithm. We love the conversation below. I'll be sitting online watching and making sure to interact with you. And also, always you can email us. Speaking of email, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe wherever you are. If you're on YouTube, hit the big red button and then the notification bell. Go over to Rumble and make sure you subscribe there so that we are censor-proofed for you all across social media. But most importantly, go to philschlafly.com, sign up for our email list with that top banner up there, and I will be able to get directly to you and tell you when this and other important things are happening that you want to be a part of. So, without further ado, let's jump in here to our topic for the week. Andrew, you and I were going back and forth because we're friends. We text each other, all sorts of funny things that you wish you were in on. Maybe you and Andrew, you and I should start a big group like channel for everyone. That would be good. And we'd share our stuff. But one of the things we're going back and forth on, I'm not sure if everyone has seen, there's a lot going on with, Robert Kennedy Jr. has gotten into the race for president. There's, a bunch of different things here and there. But one of the things that we picked up on that kind of led down this whole road of the system, kind of reminiscing over RFK Jr. running, Trump running in 2016, again, bringing everything together. Elon Musk sat down with a BBC reporter for an interview, and say what you will. I know, Andrew, you and I joked a lot about, Elon Musk saving free speech and coming to take over Twitter. And sure enough, he's actually come through with a lot of the things he said he was going to do. But Elon is disrupting this system, this part of what Ed always calls the narrative machine, which I think is a very apt description, a very dangerous cocktail of big media enterprise, big tech enterprises, and big government. But in the big media and the big tech world, man, Elon has really served as a disruptor. But he certainly disrupted this BBC guy. In fact, I'll post it in the comment here where I drop all of our links down below. But he just tore this guy up during one clip where someone was he was complaining about this journalist section of Twitter having seeing a big rise in hateful content. So Elon basically, well, give me an example. Oh, I don't remember any examples. And Elon was like, well, no, you just accused us of having hateful content. Like, you got to give me an example. Oh, well, I don't remember. I don't use it anymore. Well, then how did you see it? Like, it's just funny to watch. Like, you can kind of tell Elon Musk's mouth is almost hanging open. Like, you can't just drop this random unfounded accusation and then back away from it. You got to give me something. It kind of looks like one of these classic movie moments where someone gets caught lying, and that's exactly what it is. So, Andrew, you and I have spun off to this whole conversation. Like, the era of Trump has brought about the era of fake news. We used to have, what our parents listening to Rush Limbaugh called mainstream media bias and the left wing or the liberal media. But it's just gone to full blown fake news, and we're, blowing this out all over the place. I think there's a serious conversation that conservatives need to have here about how to find truth in journalism and how to navigate this world of obviously biased journalism. Andrew, where do we go for unbiased journalism? Does it even exist anymore? And better than that, should it or can it is maybe the better question. What do you think? What are your top hits?
Well, there really is no such thing as unbiased journalism. It's just not true. It's not a real thing. There's journalism that reveals its bias, therefore it's honest and factual, which I can appreciate. Well, maybe not factual, but at least it's honest, right? But I think what it has to be, and historically speaking, journalism always has been, is it's been in the pursuance of truth with a revealing of bias, right? So even going back into American history and colonial history, you had papers that, favored Federalists, favored Anti-Federalists, favored Whigs, favored Tories, favored Republicans, favored Democrats, and they had their bias presented. And it really wasn't until journalism became a profession, if you look into the history of this, it's quite interesting, actually, with a lot of these people like Pulitzer and some of these other guys, where journalism became not only just a business, but a profession where you'd go to college and get a degree to become a journalist. And institutions like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal kind of arose out of this, where we are professional journalists. We are these gold collar individuals who, this is our profession, this is our bread and butter, and we specialize in pure unbiased news. Well, you have to ask, what is unbiased, right? Because you're reporting on stories, you're reporting on facts, you're reporting on instances and occurrences that happen in our world. But even our friend Dr. Brian Ray, who's the founder and president of the National Home Education Research Institute, has made statements. And we went a couple caucuses ago and talked about some of his research, and he even said there's no such thing as unbiased research, because even in the purest, most factual, most truth pursuant research project, you still have to make decisions on who am I going to compile this research from? What questions am I going to ask? What demographic am I going to target? And therefore, all these decisions that you're asking, they're excluding all the other options that are available to you, therefore relaying a bias. And we know that every individual has a bias and has a worldview. So in my opinion, Ryan, the best way of going about this is having everybody reveal what their bias is, pursue truth and pursue facts with that bias revealed, and then have the people being informed and educated, looking at all the different options and making up their own minds. Because believe it or not, we can use common sense and our rational abilities and our better judgment to make up our minds and make our own decisions. And I think that's the best way of going about it. Because when we do this little facts first CNN and this fair and balanced Fox News thing, and everyone's trying to claim to be the neutral, unbiased, we are the only people out there in the business that really give everybody a fair shake. Well, there's no such thing. You're selling your business on a false proposition, because everyone's going to have some sort of a bias. So be honest, be good. And that's why I like the Epic Times, for example, right? They try to be very factual and very truthful. But even in their little statement, they say truth and tradition, which
I was about to say
itself is a bias.
Exactly. And that's what I was about to say. Would you say it's fair to even say, I hope that my news, not the news makers, but the news reporters have a bias. I hope that they're biased toward the truth. I'm biased toward following what this fact tells me, not toward telling you what I wish it were. And that's the problem. Like, the bias it's kind of the greatest fallacy to say that we're unbiased. No, you should have a bias, and that bias should be to reporting what has happened, or what the facts are of a situation. So when you have what we've seen, this rise of the propaganda wing of the left, it's not the problem is the bias that they have is toward their truth, toward making up a truth. It's not toward finding the truth. And they've created this whole section of little monsters to deal with, which is what we see in the form of college students arguing with Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh on college campuses, this BBC guy going with Elon Musk. Like, we're just making something up and then moving on, and you're throwing some wild assumptions into what is or is not true. And isn't your job to be biased toward finding out what is true rather than making up what is true for you? Or what you think should be true for other people. So that, I think you hit the nail on the head there. First of all, you just can't not be biased in any way, shape, or form. But shouldn't we be biased, and shouldn't it be a good thing to be biased towards the truth? And I think that's a very important distinction to make when we as conservatives are looking at the news, looking at headlines, and kind of weighing everything. I think we all know that there's this narrative and that narrative, but there should be a bias toward the truth. Even when you find someone who's trying so hard to not have a bias, that already you should be careful about, because there's someone who maybe is just, oh, well, I'm just trying not to take any side. Well, there is a side to take, and it's the side of facts and truth, whatever that is. If you're honest enough to admit that that's the side to take, then there's a side to take. I hope that you take that side. If you're going to, what was it? Francis Schaeffer's comment in How Shall We Then Live about people being, having their feet planted firmly in midair. It's awful when people try to exist there. And that's even as equally dangerous as someone who's just running you down the side of leftist propaganda. But this is a whole big conversation to dive into. And it's good. Let me see. There were several different offshoots that we had here.
Well,
let me talk about. I was about to say, chime in there.
We see this move of censorship, right? And this authoritarianism, whether that be from the government or from private corporations, in a war effort to go against bias and to go against misinformation, if you will. We censor and restrict people. But really the opposite is what needs to happen. We need to allow everything to be free, therefore allow everything to be biased, like we just said, so that people can pursue truth, because truth is biased because it excludes falsehood. So
Right.
we need to understand that. But also, there's this element here where, in the name of being unbiased, in the name of fighting against misinformation, these big corporations and ultimately government and these Marxist crooks at the top of this system, they want to push a narrative. So therefore, they have to, by definition of pushing their narrative, which is built upon lies, censor and cancel people. There can't be propaganda unless there's some sort of distance between the accessible truth of a story or situation and the people. And that's where these authoritarians and these despots step in and say, okay, we're going to censor these people and we're going to censor them for misinformation. Well, really, at the end of the day, it's not misinformation. It's information that's biased against their lies. And they take that as misinformation and an attack. But things can't be biased and restricted. Then it has to be just pure propaganda and a pure state-controlled information state. And that's kind of where we're heading right now. And I love platforms that come up like Rumble, for example, where Rumble's going to let anybody, at least from my understanding, of any persuasion, come and post things on their platform. And I think that's going to do well for them, opposed to YouTube, where you can say, insert a handful of political opinions and stances on current events, and whoa, this is misinformation. This is a challenge to the authorities. Well, I thought that was the whole point of the First Amendment and the 5 freedoms in there. It's not just religion and speech, petition, press, assembly, all these different other and crucial elements to speaking our conscience. And this is working out very well for platforms like Rumble, who I believe it was just this morning, it was announced that Rumble made an exclusive deal with the RNC to put out the Republican primary debates this August. That's a great thing. I'd love to see Rumble get some more proprietary and exclusive showings for different events and happenings, because that's really the best option we have apart from YouTube at the moment, to be able to get things out there that are free and biased.
And I mean, that was what I was looking for. Is I knew we were going that direction, but there was, as we were going back and forth about this and talking about this topic, there was one in our back and forth, that phrase, bias alone does not make propaganda. Propaganda is when you have your bias and you shut down any and all other or opposing discussion. That's really the switch that we've seen. That's the trend that has happened, especially in the era of Trump. And this kind of leads us in. I want to talk about this, this is a really interesting thing to get down to look at the rise of Trump in 2016 and the shift that happened in the news. Someone finally came along who didn't kind of play by the traditional rules, and it just raised the hackles of all of the media. But that's when we flipped this switch into full-on censorship, screaming people down, which, I mean, that's always happened to some extent, but that's been like college kids on a campus screaming someone down, not CNN. And now it was all of a sudden CNN. We flipped this switch from extreme bias to propaganda, when not only do we have our bias, we have to create this little vacuum where no one hears anything else. The other side's not even allowed to speak. And that really is telling. That is right there the mark of something that is to be avoided. So as we're looking for information, because this happens on the right-wing side of things as well. You'll find sources who we're not even going to have the conversation. No, you want to have the people who admit, I have this bias, but let's have a conversation. You're allowed to speak. I'm allowed to speak. Let's go back and forth. When someone does not want to have the conversation, does not want to facilitate the conversation, this is more of the key than, oh, that's biased news. Well, maybe we should change our marker as far as what we as conservatives are looking for. We need to find people who are willing to have the conversation, have both sides, because we know it's, the ones who shut down the conversation, like, I think this is another thing we said earlier, if I have to shut the conversation down and that I demand on that, that means that I know that I can't win on the merits. I have to have the only microphone here. Otherwise I lose. If you're right, sure, bring it on. Let's have the debate, because I'm pretty sure that I'm right here. There's definitely a difference there. So as we're looking, I feel like conservatives often run to this bias is kind of our trigger word, but there's more to it than that. It's inherently biased, and that's okay. But what are we biased to? Are we biased to having open discussion? Are we biased to finding the truth? Or am I biased to the point of my truth is the best and I have to shut down all the discussion? That is the level of propaganda that the news switched over to in 2016 with Trump. And I think this is definitely a very interesting time for 2024 with Trump running and with RFK Jr. now running as a Democrat. that's what we're having. I don't know. I think we mentioned, we briefly got into this last week. I don't think either of us really has a strong opinion about RFK Jr. running, except that I'm kind of excited to see someone who is a disruptor enter the field, because I think that now more than ever, there is, we have these clash of values. We have to decide the values of our country, what we're going to govern upon. This is obviously the most important thing. These are what I base my convictions off of. But the political strategy of this moment, very similar to 2016, almost more than that, we have a very big pressing need for people to disrupt and break down the system, because there are so many people who don't realize what's going on. They don't realize that they're being sucked into the lies of news networks that are no longer biased news, but just pure propaganda channels. Someone needs to disrupt that system and kind of snap everyone out of it, so the Elon Musks of the world even look in and go, wait a minute. What you're saying doesn't even make sense. Like, you can't do this. Let's be honest. Let's be reasonable. That's the first step. I'd love for everyone to come over to my side of thinking, but if I can at the very least get someone to look at it and go, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. You're not telling the truth. That's step one. And I feel like an RFK Jr. in the race definitely cracks that egg open in a very interesting way. It makes people, bad people pull their hair out, and good people who are maybe kind of asleep to these issues wake up and go, oh, wait a minute, what's he saying? So I don't know if you have anything more than that on him, but that's my perspective. I welcome that into the race, especially on the Democrat side, because we need disruptors to kind of wake people up.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I'm not a fan of RFK to the point where I want him to be president by any means. He's not a social conservative by any stretch of the imagination. He has some great opinions about a certain mandated substance that I'm very appreciative of his perspective on that. However, he still aligns with the Democratic Party platform enough to run. But the interesting thing about this is that the Democrats are going to absolutely reject him, just like, a stork's going to reject a baby wolf in its nest. I mean, they're just not going to do it. They're gonna kick him out as fast as you can possibly imagine. But there's some interesting, observances that we can really get out of this run. Is that it's just like we've been talking about with the media and the news. The people who claim to want to have freedom of the press and no misinformation out there, they can't stand any other opinion that's in opposition to run and align with them on the junior. So that's really interesting to me. I don't agree with him politically, but I'm interested to see how this works. And he's a system disruptor. And I'd love to see that conversation take place in the Democratic Party, where at the very least, we can just highlight what we already know to be true, even more so, that the Democratic Party is not interested in anybody thinking outside the box or acting as a sovereign individual that is a free thinker and a critical thinker. They're just going to kick them to the curb. And we saw that a little bit with individuals such as, Joe Manchin and Tulsi Gabbard. But I think this is a little bit different in so much as this is a guy whose family is very historic in America, and Manchin and Gabbard don't have that, but the Kennedys do. So that'll be really interesting to see. And I know a lot of people are very, eager for his run and would maybe even like to see Trump pick him as a vice president. I know Roger Stone's been gunning for that. And maybe I don't go that far. I don't think Robert Kennedy would even accept that. But it's kind of this appeal to, hey, I'm all for conservatism. I'm not speaking. I'm speaking as some things I've heard from people.
Sure.
People are more concerned about just disrupting the system and breaking away from this kind of matrix mentality of just go along to get along and follow the party line. That even somebody like Robert F. Kennedy, who they don't agree with on everything, but he's willing to break out of the shell. I think we've gotten into a moment in our American political dialogue to say, you know what, I might not agree with this person on everything, but I'm willing to support them to some extent, even if it just be in word, because they're breaking away and breaking out of the matrix and being a system disruptor. And as Ed says, going against the narrative machine. And that's something to at least praise and look at, because we can have that discussion of biases and facts and aim towards the truth. But if you're going to censor and cancel people and kick them out because, hey, they don't follow party line, then this is not a free functioning republic anymore. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that transpires.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that we've seen little glimpses of this, to your point. Tulsi Gabbard, who I still have some questions about, like, there's a big difference between authentic conservative and welcome ally. These are two different things. I recognize that. A lot of people, oh, you can't be friends. Oh, I'm not saying that some of these folks are exactly like me. They don't have the same convictions for the same reasons, but I welcome them as an ally because we're fighting a common enemy. And this is kind of a big deal. The authoritarians who shut down free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. Yeah, I'll take allies. But we've seen little glimpses of it. Tulsi, Manchin in Congress, but now we've got a real interesting opportunity, and that's kind of what I'm excited about. Is anyone who is very tuned into everything knows that I don't. Is it fair to say that Robert Kennedy Jr. and Joe Rogan are kind of two peas in the same pod, like a little bit out there sometimes for people? Maybe not. Maybe that's being a little bit extreme, but for people who aren't really in tune with exactly who he is and what he talks about, this is a Kennedy. This is one of the classical 20th century Democratic names. Not Democratic. There's nothing Democratic about the Democrat Party. Let's be clear. This is one of the classic Democrat names coming into the forefront. So I think, if anything, a lot of the folks out there who are kind of asleep, and I hate to use movie references for everything, but really the Matrix is the perfect reference for everything here, because so many people, whether they're apathetic or lazy or tuned into their lives more than the big picture, it's just easier to not know what's going on. And you do reach a point where it's like literally everything around you is kind of not that way, and you got to wake up and realize that's not how it is. That's like the perfect analogy for a lot of where we are right now. That Kennedy name might be enough to actually snap a few more people that the Tulsis of the world, even the Joe Manchins of the world, aren't going to reach. That name hits them and it just goes right by. They don't care. But Kennedy. Oh, Kennedy. Oh yeah, my dad loved JFK. Who's this? Oh, this is his nephew. Oh, like that actually might have some pretty significant power to get a whole new wave of folks who kind of center left to turn and notice, wait a minute, I can have some differences with these folks over here, the conservatives, on these social issues and maybe exactly what we do or don't tax or who is or isn't in charge of education. But this stuff that y'all are doing is nuts. It is radical. It is out there, and you're lying about it. And we have to, like Elon Musk, challenge. Stop. Give me one example. Just tell me one. And he can't do it. And I feel like this is the same conversation we see, and it seems kind of extreme, but I think this is the practical application. What looks like it's always, well, let me back up. I think that our practical marching advice from this, what we should do as conservatives at any level that we're at, wherever our sphere of influence is, it is not just for the Matt Walshes, the Ben Shapiros, the big brain, big mouth conservatives who get a big stage full of college, kids in the room and get to argue with someone and drill down. But no, tell me the fact. But no, you can't say that. You're making assumptions. It is not just up to them to have those discussions. Elon Musk is doing it with BBC. You and I can do it with other people. I've done this with family. When someone throws something out, well, so-and-so said, so it must be true. Well, no, hold on. Tell me why. Like, give me the example. Why do you think that? Why do you think that there's systemic racism in America? Like, give me an example of that today. Just a practical example. Like, when I've actually challenged a family member on that, you get, well, it's like, well, what? Tell me just one thing. I mean, I'm not even saying that you're a liar. Just one thing. Like, I'm just curious what the one thing is, because I didn't see it, and maybe you did. And people can't get it. Is time for us all to be able to drill down on that, not to scream at people, obviously, but I think that's our marching orders. For crying out loud, it's not just Ben Shapiro on college campuses anymore. It's Elon Musk, who's not even a big name conservative, who is drilling down on these liars, saying, oh, hold on, you can't just throw this stuff out there and move on. You have to cite your source, back it up, tell me why, give me a reason to believe you. Like, that's not unfair, is it? That's our marching order to take from this. It is time to go full force into this stuff and to have those conversations, because I think there are a lot of people for whom it is just more comfortable to believe, oh, this must be true because someone who ought to know, the expert journalist, the expert healthcare bureaucrat told me so. Right. Really? That's because someone told you so? But why did they tell you so? Where's the evidence for why this is the right thing, the truth, the real information? That's our marching orders. It's time, man. I think it's time for everyone at every level to start poking and challenging that more, because like we see with the BBC guy, like we see with all the college kids on campus, with the Daily Wire folks, man, it is the world is bonkers and there's no backup for it. So it's time to poke them. While Andrew's camera decides to revolt here. Overheating. Andrew, are we just bringing the heat too much for your cameras over there talking about truth?
Yeah, it gets
Just
the
a
lights
little
and
bit?
the words.
Woo!
It just can't handle it.
Man, you got to, Andrew, you need to wear not such nice shirts. It's
It
just
is.
too much for your cameras. The
It's
heat,
too
they just
much.
can't handle it.
The lens can't take
But
it.
anyway,
Yeah,
this
I have
is
one final thought
I
on
think
this.
this is it. This is the time for us to go full force into that, because people are just too easy to believe it and go along because it's easier, and it's just not true. Just give me an example, just one.
Yeah, I have a final thought on this.
Yeah.
With regards to everything here, I think it's so often, and let me qualify my statement that I'm about to make with this. There is one truth, one absolute truth, one absolute way of looking at every situation, right? There's a right and there's a wrong, period, right? Absolutely. And there's no buts about that. When you're fighting an enemy as big as the one we're fighting, these Marxists, godless, atheists, tyrants, there does come a point, and this is my movie reference for the day. I did The Matrix, and then I'll do a better one here, and I'll end it. But it's in Lord of the Rings, right? I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan. We love Lord of the Rings. You saw all these different groups of people in all these different areas. You had elves, you had dwarves, you had hobbits, you had men, right? And they all had their different ways of thinking about things, their own different cultures, their own different backgrounds, their own different styles of life. And many times they fought together and it had wars together. But at the end of the day, they all had to link arms and fight against a common enemy, which was Sauron, right? And we kind of see that moment almost today into America where, you know what, I might disagree with you about the economy. I might disagree with you about the border. I might disagree with you about conservatives talking here, an Article 5 convention or something. I might fervently disagree with you about that. And that issue matters and it's important.
Yeah.
But should I shun you completely and not work with you completely, fighting against in genuine good faith the ultimate enemy that we're fighting against, which is the satanic, godless movement of Marxism and totalitarianism? I think there needs to be that Lord of the Rings moment where we're at the Council of Elrond and we say, you know what? We are going to link arms and do a last-ditch final effort and fight against this tyranny that if we don't stop, will literally enslave every single human being and take over the earth.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to defeat it ultimately. And yes, all these other different issues, they absolutely matter. And many of them are hills worth dying on completely. But when it comes to that big issue of fighting for freedom, it's okay to link arms in some situations with people you differ with to fight against a common enemy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. I couldn't have come up with a more nerdy explanation for it. I love it. We just went full nerd, and I endorse this wholeheartedly. And I think that's the good note to end on. That's really it. I think that that message of unity combined with a fearlessness to poke holes in the arguments that are given to us that just don't make sense. That's the marching orders here that we have, and I think that there's a lot of interesting opportunities. So yeah, if we understand that there's really no such thing as unbiased media, we're looking for the bias toward the truth. We got to do something about it ourselves and poke holes in the people who are so obviously not just biased but propagandist, and then take some pointers from the chief twit over here who's poked a hole in BBC. And actually, that's one thing I'm going to drop my bonus link for the day is I'll drop in that Elon Musk clip with the BBC guy. But it reminded me as soon as I saw it, one of my all-time favorite clips of Phyllis Schlafly was a big, longer, like a 30-minute debate that she had with Betty Friedan. You know, Betty Friedan, one of the chief feminists of the day, one of the big vocalists for the 1970s and 80s. Feminist movement, the Equal Rights Amendment. They had a little bit of a debate on the, not a formal debate, but just sitting next to each other on the Good Morning America, I think it was, or the Today Show, I forget. But there's a great clip in there where Phyllis, or Betty Friedan makes this cast-off comment about how, oh, well, because all colleges are biased against women and don't allow them in, blah, blah, blah. And Phyllis was like, hold on. I went to 2 colleges and no one ever disallowed me because I was like, what college? You didn't tell me one. Name one. Oh, I can name 30. I'm not going to name one. Don't name 30, Phyllis says. Just name one. Just one. Oh, I'm not going to name one. And then she moves on. It's like, this is exactly what they're still doing today. Oh, well, I saw in the Twitter For You section, it's really racist. Really? Oh, what did you see that was racist? Oh, I don't remember. No, go on and tell me. Tell me one thing. It's word for word almost the same thing. We're going to casually throw out this huge sweeping accusation and then just cap it off, and I don't have to come back and back myself up. I loved it. Reminded me of what Phyllis did. So Elon, Phyllis, Trump, we got all these peas in a pod. None of it makes sense, but they're challenging the narrative. They are biased in the bias toward truth, data. Tell me why. Give me a reason why you say that. And I think we need to be too. So there you go. There's our media class from Ryan and Andrew. And we're not even charging for this one today. Although, as I've said, we may come up with some sort of, I don't know, a Patreon, a Discord server, something we can charge so that you guys can be in on our internal conversations. We can make a little bit of tip money. You never know. It's a possibility. I'm kidding. I'm only kidding. Maybe, unless there's real interest. You have our email address, and you can sign up for it if you aren't already. But I guess we'll leave it there. We're hit about 30 minutes. So we'll say thank you for listening to our conversation today, our little internal discussion. And I hope this is, again, just as always, encouraging of you to be thoughtful and kind of bat this stuff around. Find your Andrews, find your Ryans, find your friends, your family members that you can have these conversations with, because there's a lot of stuff that we need to be armed and equipped with the facts, not our facts, the facts first. And it's really important. So the conversations are good and healthy. And we look forward to having another one with you next Thursday here on another Unauthorized Caucus. Go sign up for the email list, hit the subscribe button wherever you are, and share this video so that others join us too. We'll see you next Thursday, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, for some good thoughts and for bringing this to us.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week, everyone.